Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for tuning in to the Other Side of Success podcast. My name is Tyler Rutledge, and I am your host. We've got a great guest today, Miss Lauren Sisler. But before we get going, let me thank my sponsors. I want to thank Farmhouse Fitness, Movement with Purpose. This is Birmingham's go-to gym for results-driven training. I love what they do for my physical health, but also my mental health. In Game Day Men's Health in Tuscaloosa, they're located over on 13th Street, a first-class shop, guys. They're helping me with a personalized peptide treatment, and I cannot recommend them enough. Enough of that. Let's get into Lauren Sisler. Lauren is a former collegiate gymnast. She's an Emmy Award-winning ESPN sideline reporter and author of Shatterproof: How I Overcame the Shame of Losing My Parents to Opioid Addiction, and found her sideline shimmy. Lauren's journey has taken her from the gym floor to the sidelines of some of the biggest games in college football, but her story runs much deeper. At just 18 years old, she tragically lost both parents within hours of each other to prescription drug overdoses. What followed was a long and painful season of grief, shame, and silence. But Lauren did not stay there. She found the courage to tell her story. And today she's helping others own theirs, whether on the field or from the stage. She lives in Birmingham, Alabama with her husband, John, and their son, Mason, and their yellow lab, Magnolia. Lauren, welcome to the show.
Hello. Thank you so much for having me. I so appreciate it. Always great to chat. And obviously, living here in Birmingham's awesome. I know you're just a stone's throw away on the other side of town there. And so it's great to connect with you, Tyler.
Hey, listen, so I ask everybody, when you hear that bio, what do you think?
Oh man. I don't know. It's crazy because it's never lost on me as I think about the journey. Like you mentioned that word journey, and like all of a sudden my heart was just like, oh my gosh, this has been a long winding journey to get to this place. Many years to be able to sit in this chair and have this conversation openly, honestly, and with my heart.
Yeah, it's I'm so excited to be able to share this with folks, and we're going to lay the foundation, and then we're going to dig straight into the Shatterproof story, because I know that's what people, they want to know more about. It's something that has impacted millions of people, and I know you're passionate about it. So I know that you were a gymnast at Rutgers. Tell us about your early days, your childhood. Where did you grow up? How'd you end up at Rutgers?
Yeah, it's interesting. So I'm from Virginia. Most of the folks in Alabama would argue that it is not from the South. However, I'm from the rural parts of Virginia, so I consider myself to be pretty Southern.
There you
And
go.
of course, when I got the y'all in my dialect, I feel like it counts for something. So, I grew up in Virginia, grew up in Roanoke, and was an athlete, was a gymnast pretty much my entire young childhood. Started when I was 3 and kind of worked my way up the ranks. And then
Yeah.
in middle school and high school, I realized, like, as I kept growing, I'm a little bit too tall to be a gymnast. I realized, ew, we might need to rethink this whole thing. But I love the sport so much, so I knew gymnastics was it, but maybe a college scholarship was the deal. So I started sending out my recruiting tapes, and Rutgers came across my radar. Went for an official visit, and I'll be honest with you, like, Rutgers is in Jersey, what feels like a million miles away from where I grew
Right.
up, and certainly a different culture. But I loved it. Went for a visit, spent some time there. Felt like it was a place I could really spread my wings and fly. And so signed my letter of intent, and Rutgers it was. Always have to remind people in the state of Alabama specifically, when I wear red, it is not crimson. It
There you
is
go.
scarlet. I wear scarlet on my sleeve, man.
I love it. Yeah, I tell you, at 5'9", you must have been an elite gymnast.
Yeah.
That's I think
My
I saw the,
radius much longer than most, right? Gymnastics is a sport where being compact helps you. That was not for me.
yeah, I think I read that Simone Biles is like 4'5".
I think she's like 4'8", which is like
Okay.
itty bitty.
I
I
mean,
mean,
that's, my
yeah.
6-year-old's not far from there. So
I mean, insane.
that's
That
incredible.
is teeny tiny in my radius. I mean, even at 4'3", 4'4", I mean, I'm sorry, 5'3", 5'4" is when I was, kind of in middle school and high school, and I hit my growth spurt. Like, that's tall. Like, when you
Yeah.
start hitting that height, it definitely requires a big adjustment. And
Yeah.
so, but I will say, now being where I am in life as a
Right.
female covering sports, I do enjoy being taller. I don't feel like I get swallowed up out there on the field with those big old Brutus linemen. you know,
Golly, yeah, it's
quite as
crazy,
bad.
right? Now you got guys out there that are like 6'9", 400 pounds. It's
Yeah.
just like,
Yeah.
oh man. How did you get into sports and media broadcasting? What was your path there?
Yeah, it's interesting. I actually wanted to be a sports doctor. That was kind of my childhood dream, and that was what I was chasing after. But of course, when I was at Rutgers, and I know we'll get more into the story, but I was struggling mightily to keep my grades up. I knew that
Mhm.
I probably wasn't going to be able to get into med school, so it was like, all right, probably need to adjust. And I think we have dreams as kids, like I want to be a doctor, but like, do we really know at like 8 years old what it requires to be a doctor? No.
No.
And so, it was one of those things where I had to kind of make that adjustment and realize that where my passion's at, and
No.
made that switch. And honestly, it's pretty cool because I mean, I'll say this. There's a lot of kids, a lot of people that I know that say like, "Oh, they grew up with a microphone in their hands," right? They knew from day one they wanted to be a broadcaster. And
Yeah.
for me, that was a later vision of mine, but I kind of think it's cool, that I kind of picked it up late in life and just kind of ran with it. So,
Yeah, that's neat. I know it's a very competitive job, and that's kind of one of the things that I want to know is like, what was the hardest part about finding your voice in broadcasting, knowing that you kind of came in later and maybe didn't come up the ranks for the more, I don't know if it's political. I feel like it probably is as far as climbing the ladder.
yeah. I mean, like any industry, right? People always use that whole right place, right time thing. And I think there is some of that for sure. But for me, like it was really just a grind and gutting it out and knowing like, okay, making those different steps and transitions. I went back to my hometown station, was a photographer and editor. So I was like behind the camera, like, editing, doing all the hustle and bustle of that, and then transition to being an anchor. But it was like one man banding in Parkersburg, West Virginia, itty bitty, like tiny town in West Virginia, and then ended in Birmingham in 2011, which is crazy because at that time, obviously, let's be real, like, the dynasty that is, or some people will say was, Alabama football, is kind of up and coming. And so that's around the time when, Alabama was coming up and then SEC Network was about to launch. And so
Yeah.
it's kind of crazy just being in that, kind of right place, right time in that sense. But
Mhm.
I will say this, there was a moment in time, and I tell this story, and I think it's crazy. So I remember sitting in it was like a Hampton Inn. I'm sitting there eating the continental breakfast, my waffles and Cocoa Puffs, and looking up at this little TV that was sitting on top of the refrigerator in the little continental breakfast area. And I remember looking up at that and being like, I see Sam Ponder, and I'm like, well, who is this girl, right? And I like look her up, and she had just transitioned from Longhorn Network to College Game Day.
Yeah.
And of course, I look up her age and who she is. I kind of do the bio run, and I'm like, oh my gosh, she's younger than me, obviously gorgeous, amazing energy. And I'm thinking, wow, like she's already at College Game Day. And I'm sitting here at a continental breakfast at the Hampton Inn about to go cover an Alabama game on the road, like for a local TV station. Oh, no. Have I missed my mark? Like,
Yeah.
and that was kinda like a gut check and almost a reality check for me.
Wow.
And then I realized, like, wait a second, like, my journey is my journey, and I think that's what we have to encourage people in their lives, right? Because
Mhm.
we all wanna compare. We wanna compare who came from where, how did they get there, what did they do to get there, and age, like, the age factor, right? Like, especially as females in this industry, like, the whole
Yeah.
age factor. What's your shelf life? Like, how, at what point are you too old? And so I think that we a lot of times just have to like pull away from that and realize that like your journey is going to look different than my journey, than your journey, Tyler. Everybody's journey looks different,
Yeah.
but that's okay.
Yeah.
And never to get discouraged when you feel like, oh my gosh, am I behind the eight ball? Because the doors open when they're meant to open.
Mm.
And I think that we have to be patient in that and recognize that doors open when they're meant to, and they will slam shut in your face if you will allow them to. And sometimes that is just as beneficial as the doors that open, woo, swing wide
That's
open.
right.
You need them slamming in your face just as much.
That's why it's important to keep that daily walk with the Lord, because you never know what doors are going to open and which doors are going to slam shut, right?
Exactly. Yep.
Was there a
Exactly.
moment when you were covered in game and you were just like, "Oh my goodness, like I'm doing this." Like do you have that one moment in the back of your mind?
Well, it's interesting. I'll say this, so when I made the transition and started doing college football, it was 2016. I did an Auburn game. It was like Cupcake Week, and I remember just being I was so nervous. Like I was such a nervous wreck, and almost to the point like I made myself sick. To the point where
Yeah.
I was just like, I don't think I can do this. This sucks. This is so hard. And then I
Yeah.
got done with it, and it was like, I did it. And then I rinse and repeat, same thing. And it's kind of funny because it's similar to being an athlete. And I was actually talking to Bart Connor and Brody Malone about this, two very incredible Olympians, probably more well-known men's gymnasts on different sides of the eras, right? Bart Connor,
Mhm.
back in the, 80s, 90s, and then Brody Malone coming off this last Olympics. And it was funny because we were talking about as athletes, you like literally wake up, you leave your hotel room, you're ready to throw up. You're like, my gosh, why do I do this to myself? I'm a
Yeah.
nervous ball of wreck. I'm a wreck. I'm a train wreck. Why do I do this to myself? You go out there, you compete, you finish the competition. Maybe it's good, maybe it's bad, maybe it's great, maybe it's not, but you finish. And then it's like, that sigh of relief. And I really felt that for a long time in what I do. And I'm on like an adrenaline high when it comes to performing out there because I do get nervous when I go out
Yeah.
there and compete and perform. Because to me, it is a competition, it is a performance when I go out there on game day. But I'll tell you, a couple years ago, it was actually last year. I'll say this: I was out on the sidelines. It was just before my book launched. And I remember like that imposter syndrome thing kind of like starts setting in of like, why am I here? How am I here? And then all of a sudden I remember I was walking in the back of the end zone. I was at an Arizona game. It was my first game of the season. And I remember feeling my feet on the ground saying, "Oh my gosh." And I look out onto the vast field as the players had already gone in from warm-ups and they're making the announcements, the music's playing, band's playing, and I go, I'm doing this. Like,
Yeah.
I'm doing this. And I guess it was just like another moment of clarity for me that, like, when those voices in your head tell you you don't belong, you take that moment to get your feet back where they are.
Yeah.
And I think, as you mentioned, the faith piece of this, God is good at putting us back where we belong.
Yeah.
Because it's easy just to kind of have that like float away.
Amen.
We float away from ourselves in so many ways because of the doubts and the things that creep in, the enemy, the
Mm.
things that want to tell us we're not enough, we're not good enough, you're never going to get there, just quit trying.
Mm.
And I think that's where I was like, wait a sec. And that was right before my book came out because I'll tell you, I kept saying to myself, like, who cares? Like,
Yeah.
why write a story? Why tell my story? Like, who the heck cares?
I mean, I relate to that so much. I mean, I feel like, and you get it coming from athletics and being in TV, you talk about performing, and that's what it is. People are probably sick and tired of listening to this every episode, but I just feel like it's always important to go back to the mission of how this podcast started, which was the other side of success is everybody sees where you are right now. They see you on TV, they see the sideline shimmies, the bright smile, the incredible personality, right? They see
Mhm.
the finished product. But what they don't see is what led to that, right? And the fact that there is always a story behind the success. And
Yeah.
so I
So
kind of
good.
want to get to with you, your book, Shatterproof. I want you to take me back to that day. I want you to, if you don't mind sharing with our listeners, like, what was it like then?
Yeah, I'll tell you, going back to that day, obviously there's a lot of scars there, but I also look at those scars as growth and where I'm at today and looking at that journey because when I was a freshman in college, sitting in my dorm room studying for exams, I called my parents, talked to them on the phone. We were like best friends. It was not a day went by I didn't talk to my parents, my mom and dad. We were just like, whew, and everything seemed normal. And then I remember setting my alarm clock, going to bed that night, and then that phone rings and my entire world changes.
Hmm.
And my dad called to let me know that my mom died. And it just was such a shocking thing for him to say because, like, we just talked on the phone. My mom's 45 years old. It's the middle of the night. Like, what happened? And he said, I can't explain it now. I need you to get on the next plane you can, and I'll be at the airport to pick you up. And it suddenly was just this whirlwind of like,
Mhm.
I'm 18 years old. I didn't have $50 in my bank account. I got to get a plane ticket home. We're calling the airline. We're on hold for 30 minutes. We use my roommate's emergency credit card. I go bang on my friend's door. I need a ride to the airport. This was back before Uber and all that stuff. And so it was just complete chaos. And it was just this frantic rush to get home to my dad because I knew I needed my dad to tell me everything was gonna be okay. And then I get to the airport and I soon find out that my dad too passed away.
Like, it's unfathomable for me as someone who's lost my biological father and my stepdad 3 years apart to even be able to understand losing your parents in the same day. For those of us that don't know your story completely, what happened? What was going on there?
Yeah, so, plane touches down. I find out from my uncle and my cousin who come to the airport instead of my dad that both of my parents died. My mom passing first, and then my dad passing away 5 hours after my mom. And so, there's a lot of details to the story that, as crazy as it sounds, were not uncovered until almost 2 decades after they died. Because when the investigation was done, the toxicology and death certificates were released, there was literally 3 paragraphs in this documentation telling us what happened that night. Not nearly enough to unpack, understand, and get to the why. So for both of my parents, they were going to a pain management doctor. Mom had degenerative disc disease. Dad had chronic back pain, PTSD from his service in the military, and they were prescribed medication and upwards of 490 prescription pills in the house at one given time, all prescribed to both of them, legally prescribed to them. And at some point from 1999 is when my mom had a neck fusion. From that point forward to when they passed away in 2003, there was this journey that they took into addiction.
Mm,
Because at first, they're taking it the way it's supposed to be taken, right? Meant to be taken. But eventually they begin to abuse it. It's hard for us to know as a family the exact timeline on that. But I would say a couple years into it is when probably they started to maybe take a little bit more. Hey, I got to take 2 of these today. But then all of a
yeah.
sudden their prescription would run out. And, it just became this, this snowball effect
Mm,
because not only are they dealing with the addiction, but then the financial disarray. So financially, I didn't know this, but we moved into our picture perfect dream home, right?
mm,
Very modest home out in the country, but we had acquired a land and, 2,000 square foot brick house. But for my family, that was the white picket fence house. That was
wow.
the white picket fence dream that we had had. And
Sure.
we move into this house and it's like everything started to fall apart from there. My dad took a big pay cut. My mom had to go on disability. And little did I know that my parents were literally stroking $10 checks to the power company to keep the lights on. And that went on for months and months and months and years before they passed away. And so you see these 2 people that are doing the very best they can on the outside. Everything looks great. It checks all the boxes. They're showing up to all of our events, loving us unconditionally, as supportive as any parents could be. But underneath it all, they were fighting this incredibly terrible monster of
Yeah.
addiction that ultimately took them under.
And, I don't know a whole lot about opioid addiction, but I do know that it is relentless and it's one of the hardest ones to actually break. So at 18, freshman in college, you're a gymnast. You lose both parents in the same night. Opioid addiction, there's some probably shame, sadness, grief, obviously fear. What was the narrative that you carried back to school? I mean, how did you go back to school?
Oh, man. Well, first and foremost, I will say my journey to Rutgers, we talk about the doors flying wide open and the doors slamming shut. That was one of those moments because I actually wanted to go to the Air Force Academy. That was high on the radar.
Mm,
And, I don't know. I think looking back at it, I think there were parts of me that really wanted to pursue the military. And that was partially because I was born in Guantanamo Bay. My brother was in the military. So it was kind of like a family thing. But also, I knew it was the ticket financially.
yeah.
I don't know that I was necessarily like gunning for the military because that's what I really in my heart wanted, but I knew it was gonna be the easiest route that would ensure that financially we would be okay.
Mm,
Meaning your school gets paid for, your med school gets paid for. And I felt like I could build on that. But the Air Force Academy went away because my SAT scores not good. So that door slammed.
Respect.
But I'll tell you this, Tyler, you ask, like, how did you go back to Rutgers? I think number one, it's because it was Rutgers and it was because I was on a team. It was because I had a support system. It was because I had people that loved me. And, I'd only been on the team a semester and a half, right, when all this
Right.
happened. But that was long enough to establish myself, establish a family, grow into that. And I truly think had I gone to the Air Force Academy, I don't know that I would have had the courage, the strength, the resilience to go back to that.
Wow.
But with Rutgers, it was different. It
Mm.
hit different. And, I will say I had the encouragement of my auntie Linda, my mom's sister, who was like, all right, you got to go back. Like, there's nothing here for you back home in Virginia right now. Like, you've got to go back. And so I didn't really feel like I had a choice. But I think the support system that was there,
Yeah.
I mean, I think that's just it. I think that having a support system is so critical
No
for
doubt.
us to be able to succeed. Championships aren't won alone. And I say the same, like, we can't find success without our support system. And Tyler,
Yeah.
like, shame lives in isolation.
Loves
It
it.
wants us in isolation.
Yep.
But when you bring it back out into the light and you use your support system to guide you in all of that, it takes on a different, it takes on a sure.
Yeah, I mean, we talk about it at home all the time, as my wife and I have grown in obviously our faith and untangling the childhood traumas that we both have, losing parents. And I came from a divorced household. And, we just talk about all the time, like the importance of community. And we keep a very small circle of people because we love and we love well. And as we were talking before we came on air, is if you give too much to too many people and spread yourself thin, you're neglecting the people that are the closest to you, right?
Mm, yes, so
And
good.
it's
Yes.
just the importance of having good people around you. Who are you going to go to? Who are your mentors? And those are the things that we talk about all the time. I mean, I still struggle and don't necessarily think I have the right mentors in place, and I'm working through that. But I see the need for that at all stages of life. I know that you've said openly that you have fallen in love with your story, and you wrote a book about it, right? And the title is Shatterproof. So why Shatterproof, and why fall in love with your story?
Yeah, so good. Shatterproof really kind of came to light. And I'll say this, writing a book is a labor of love. And people say that, but don't take it lightly. Oh my gosh.
So AI didn't write your book for you?
No. But I will give a big shout out to Holland Webb because his name is not on the cover of this book here because he and I worked on this book together. And it's interesting because, some people in this whole world talk about like ghostwriting and co-writing. Like I
Wow.
1000% put him in the level of co-writing because he and I, it was like taking a ball of clay and just like molding it together.
Yeah.
But I also was way more involved than I ever thought I would be. Just gosh, it was an unbelievable process. A lot of heartache, ripping open a lot of scars,
Mm.
but he forced me to go places I never would have gone on my own. Never. Never, ever, ever. But why Shatterproof? So as you get to this process, you write the book, and now all of a sudden you got to come up with the title.
Yeah.
Oh, like such a tough process. And so it was crazy as we start with my publisher, Darren and one of my PR friends and one of the guys that was helping me in this process as well with a lot of the PR. We sat down and we just started brainstorming and we were going back and forth on a bunch of stuff and we landed on Shatterproof. And he said this, and I thought it was so great because we had narrowed it down, and Shatterproof was really kind of the front runner. And as we finally leaned into that, he said, it's like someone takes a baseball bat to your life,
Mm.
shatters it into a million pieces. But through human resilience and through the spirit that you've, you know, lived through and what you've exuded in your life, like you've become shatterproof. You've been able to
Oh,
pick up those pieces and build this foundation and create something beautiful with joy and with meaning and with purpose. And that to me is shatterproof. And so that's really where we landed on that. And so I literally just see a baseball bat in the air, like just flying a million miles an hour and just the pieces just shh. And now you're standing with with all those pieces at your feet and the despair and the shame and the sadness and the grief and the anger, right?
Yeah.
Let's not forget anger because that's there too. But now what are you going to do with it?
Mm.
And so I think that is kind of the analogy we used, and that's where we came up with that. And it makes my heart flutter when I think about it.
Yeah.
So shout out to Gary Schneeberger. He's the one that really kind of helped us push that one forward across the finish line. So it's kind of cool.
So before you wrote the book, had you kind of at that point in time embraced your story, or was it almost reverse in the sense you're like, okay, I have this really cool story. I have a platform now that I'm on TV and have a larger network of people. And you started to embrace your story and fall in love with it as you were writing this book.
I think it's both because I will say when I got here to Alabama, I'm working my way through the TV industry. And, being a professional storyteller, like people are telling me their stories all the time. I'm seeing this ripple effect and I'm like, wait a sec, like I'm not sharing my story. So I started finding that courage to share my story more openly, got involved with the Addiction Prevention Coalition, was doing some work for them, being a little bit more open about my story in different circles and in different groups. And then I just saw this thing like start to blossom.
Yeah.
People are asking me, hey, come speak at this event. And instead of it being just, the sports world, the quarterback clubs, right? There's a
Yeah.
million of those requests that come in. Hey, come speak to the quarterback club. And I'm
Right.
like, hey, I'm just going to let you know this ain't going to be your run of the mill. I'm going to come in here and tell you about your sports stories. Like I've got a story to share and I'm going to lean in with you all. And so that's kind of how it all blossomed. And that was in and around 2019. And what's wild is that at that point, I think I was really starting to kind of hear the whispers, and that whisper got louder and louder. Hey, you need to write a book. You need to write a book. You need to write a book.
Yeah.
And so it is twofold because I think that I was already on that journey
Yeah.
of finding my voice. But when I say to you, like what came out of this journey of writing this book, like the discovery and let's be real, Tyler, you're never like there's no such thing as healed,
No
right?
doubt. No.
I am healing. And I think that when that journey and that process ends, then you're kidding yourself.
Yeah.
It's never over. And I think that was really cool because I realized that in this process, like here it is. Like
Right.
I'm opening up a whole nother chapter that I never thought I could even like get close to going there.
It's funny. Conversation I had yesterday, being in my seat as the person that gets to hear these stories and help people tell their stories, I always find myself just smiling as I'm doing right now because it's like I can see God's fingerprints all over this thing, right? You're at Rutgers and it's kind of like a crazy situation that you got there. Your parents die and it's like, God, how could this possibly be meant for good in
Mhm.
your glory, right?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
Lord, it doesn't make sense. And then here we are having this conversation.
Yep.
You get your break with ESPN. You have a very good platform now. You have a unique personality. And now you get to speak and you get to tell this story. And who knows how many people have read it or heard it, maybe done something about it. Maybe they've gone to a parent or a friend or a family member that's struggling with addiction and said, hey, like, I haven't said anything, but I'm not sitting on the sidelines anymore. You need to get help. You need to get fixed, and let's
Yeah.
let's walk through this together. What
I
an
love that. And Tyler, I wanna say this too, and thinking about it, I mentioned to you, like, walking through this process with Holland with this book, him forcing me to go deeper, asking questions. I give credit to people like you that are willing to have these conversations because look, this isn't easy. These conversations aren't easy to have, and when you really start digging under the surface, it's not lost on me. We were talking about the yes and no thing. Like I've gotten to the point there were weeks where I was recording 6, 7, 8 podcasts a week. And I'm like,
Yeah.
got to slow down a little because I realized the emotional toll was definitely taking on me. But I'll say this, it's not lost on me because these conversations that we have, the story's the story. And I realize that I share it over and over again. But when we get this opportunity to have these thoughtful conversations, there's a lot of intentionality behind it.
Mhm.
And I just want you to know on the other side of the microphone, what you're doing is so important and having those conversations and opening up those conversations because I will have these epiphany moments, these aha moments in conversations like this where I'm like, I've never thought of it that way before.
Yeah.
And so, definitely kudos to you for that opportunity and
I
for
just
doing
think
that.
I think one of the things that is so important in life, and we talk about community, and like I'm trying not to cry because I just think about it all the
Don't try
time,
not to
is
cry. Let her rip, baby. Let her rip, Tater Chip.
that culture in the world tells us like we got to be a certain way, right? We've got to carry, especially as a man, you've got to carry a specific type of personality. You've got to provide, you've got to be strong, you can't have certain feelings. And I don't know how you grew up with your parents, but I think our generation of kids, all parents that are good parents, do the best they can with what they have, right?
Mm.
However, our generation of parents were not therapy parents. They weren't embrace your emotions and your feelings and let's get to the root, the core of all that stuff. And, you know, I started therapy 8 years ago, and I've just changed my entire narrative on having open and honest conversations. Because, like what you're saying, is what I have found when I started this show selfishly is being able to have these conversations allows me to outwardly, using my voice, process some of my own stuff. And quite frankly, it feels really good knowing that I'm not the only one that has these struggles, and that's why I want to have these conversations, is because it's incredibly important. So I appreciate you saying that.
Yeah, I love that too about the generational things. I think that plays such a huge role in all of this. I was born in '84, so I'm 40. Born in the '80s, raised in the '90s kid, right? And
Yeah.
I do remember growing up, my dad, I mentioned he struggled with PTSD, and I saw that rear its ugly head at times, when he would just have issues, with his he was in the Navy for 5 years. He was over in Guantanamo Bay, and I know that he had to, you know, do some things over there, I guess, that were maybe not on his ideal agenda for, his military life, as it probably happens for a lot of people. When you get into that, you don't know the reaction response, how that's going to take its toll on you. And I do remember at times he would just start crying, and, especially if he would be watching a particular movie that might, you know, give him flashbacks or thoughts about things, whatever. Um, and I remember seeing that because I have a very special soft place in my heart for men that cry. I always
Yeah.
joke about this though. This is funny. This is funny how we get to this conversation because people always say like, "Well, who do you cheer for when you're on the field?" Well, I'm like, I'm in with the media. I can't cheer for anybody necessarily, but I will say this deep in my heart: if I'm covering a particular team, so let's just say I'm on the road covering, Alabama or Auburn, whomever it is, and I'm just using that as an example because we're here in the state of Alabama.
Yeah.
I'm cheering for the team that I'm covering because if I know that I've got to be in the locker room afterwards interviewing those players, there's nothing harder than being in a locker room full of grown men crying.
Yeah.
It like rips my heart out. But I think it's also because it's the empathy that I feel.
Yeah.
And I think that men more so than women, but I've also, I say this boldly because we are so quick to apologize for our emotions. We got to
Hmm.
stop. And I
Yeah.
even catch myself. And sometimes, like, even up on stage, it comes out. And I used to be like, sorry, excuse me, sorry,
Mm.
I'm sorry. Let me take a moment. I don't do that anymore. And if I do, I catch myself and say, nope,
Yeah.
there's no apologies. I take a moment, I put my hand up. And it's amazing because even that silence, in a lot of ways, I've had men and women both, like, in the audience, the attendees, everyone's silent. And all of a sudden it's like, hey, Lauren, you got this. And it's like, you're in a room full of 1,000 people and you hear a couple people pipe up and be like, hey, you got this. And then all of a sudden it's like the injured player on the field and the opposing team all stands up and applauds at the same time. It's that exact same thing. And I'm just like, that moment where I'm like, we've got to quit apologizing for our outward display of emotions.
Yeah. Goodness. It's so true. I think about where you were, what you've done, where you are today, and you're obviously an incredibly public profession. People can Google you, they can, whatever it may be.
Oh, my old Wikipedia page.
Yeah. Like, what does it
I'm like, who the
mean?
heck even I wanna know who, like, updates that because it cracks me up. I'm like, "This is weird and
I
wild and
don't know.
crazy."
Weirdos do. So if you're listening to this and you update Wikipedia pages, please stop. So
Reveal
listen, like,
yourself.
what does it mean for you to lead with authenticity in such an image-driven world?
Man, it's important. It's so important because you kinda nailed it as we were talking there, and it's exactly the point of your podcast, right? This whole idea of, like, the other side of success. Because on the outside, people do see, well, some people think the shimmy's cool, some people think it's absolutely goofy, and I'm like, "Well, just unfollow me, you don't have to like it, you don't have to follow me, whatever, whatever." But, for the most part, people think it's funny. But the other side of success, right? I'm standing on the field, I go out there, I do this for a living. And I'll tell you this, and ooh, this is gonna hit pretty hard. So unfortunately, last year, I lost my brother. It was in November 8th. I was I was sleeping actually, middle of the night in Tucson, Arizona. I get the call from my husband in the middle of the night to tell me I needed to get home once again on a plane a million miles away. And so we had my brother's funeral. And so I basically took 1 week off from football. And the very next week I was back out there in Manhattan, Kansas. And I remember talking to a close friend, someone on our crew that can empathize, that's had his own struggles with substance and has walked through a lot. And he and I have connected deeply. And I remember being in that live truck. I remember talking to him, taking a moment before I went out on that field that night. And he said, "Hey, Lauren, I just want you to know," he's like, "you're going to go stand in front of that camera
Mm,
with that microphone in your hands and you're going to go do your job. You're going to do your job well. The other people on the side of that camera are going to have no idea what you're walking through and what you've walked through and what you're about to walk into as you grieve the loss of your brother. But just know your decision, your choice, your willingness to just show up is enough." And to
mm,
me, he said that is a personal victory that you need to celebrate. And that just hit me so hard because I realized I was like, I think we're just so quick to celebrate the things that we feel like people, it's got to be big and grand,
yeah,
and like we disqualify the things that seem very simple.
right.
But it's those small victories, your decision to show up, your decision to walk through that door, your decision to love your family, to hug your wife, to take your kids to the park, to take them to their baseball practice. Like, you're showing up and
Mm,
doing the absolute best you can with what you have. And I think that is such a strong reminder that that's where the victories in life come, right? Being present, showing up, and it doesn't have to be these big celebrations, the job promotions and the what's on the outside, right? Yes, I'm on ESPN. Like, awesome. I used to care so much about what game I got assigned. Like,
right.
you know, what game is it going to be this week? I hope it's the big game. I cared so much about that promotion. When am I going to get a job promotion? When am I going to take that next step? When am I going to get to be full time with ESPN? When am I going to get
Right.
that next show opportunity? But I'm like, no, like, I'm here.
Mm,
I need to be here and not constantly chasing that next thing. And that was such a grounding moment for me last year, and realizing, like, sometimes showing up is enough.
yeah. It's crazy. And I just want to honor you for going through so much loss and being able to have a good attitude and spread light into the world. Cause I know from personal experience that that's hard. The sideline shimmy, I think it's great and hilarious. Did that come as a way to ease your nerves, or was that just Lauren?
Well, okay, so let's just put it in perspective. In my former life, I used to be a DJ Sizzler,
I
wicked,
saw
wicked.
that.
So music's always kind of been my thing. I love to
Yeah.
dance. Now, again, it's subjective to everybody, but I do not claim to be a good dancer whatsoever. And like, if you try to get me to do a choreographed dance, forget about it. Like,
Oh,
forget about it. But yeah, the nerve thing is huge because I mentioned to you, like, the nerves are still real, right? I've been doing this since 2016 at the ESPN level. We're almost coming up on a decade. And when I go out there, I mean, I even felt myself. I was at Auburn this past weekend and like, you got the eagle flying, everybody's screaming, all the things like, and then it's like, okay, 3 minutes to show. It's when they get in my ear and it's almost like the 5 minute mark, like, hey, we're 5 minutes to show. All of a sudden my body tells me like, it's go
Yeah.
time. And I'm like, oh, it's go time. And all of a sudden the nerves start to ramp up and like, I'm confident, I'm prepared, I over prepare, but yet my body's telling me like, "All right, you're in it." And I've had to learn, like, instead of trying to run away from those nerves, like, there's a gift in, like, being able to feel, because I do think that in a lot of ways we try to, like we wanna numb ourselves to feeling things when they're
Absolutely.
hard.
Yeah,
Nerves are hard. They're hard to
for sure.
navigate, right? And so a lot of times we'd rather just, like, numb out on it, but I feel like in a way it puts me back where I'm at and it reminds me of why I'm here, why I'm doing what I'm doing, and it puts me in the moment and I'm like, "Okay, embrace this." So the sideline shimmy, I think in so many ways became that grounding exercise that is both. It's not it's both, meaning I can be nervous but also have fun. I
Yeah,
can be a total train wreck internally, but I can still go out there and perform. And like
I feel you on that so much.
And I know I'm not the only one here that's listening to this right now. Nerves, man, they can get the best of you.
Oh, for
You're
sure.
preparing for that sales pitch, that, board meeting, that, you're about to go in a conference room of 5 people to present something that you feel like your entire life is on the line for. Like,
I I've got the opportunity in October to go for my very first ever speaking engagement titled "The Other Side of Success," and I'm already just like want to call the guy and just say, "Hey, I can't. And my schedule, is too busy." But so I'm already fighting the anxious nerves. But I
uh-uh.
also know that that's the enemy just trying to tell me that I'm not worthy and that I've got the imposter syndrome going because I've
Oh,
got
for
a story
sure.
to tell too, and I'm going to go tell
Yeah.
it.
Hey, you know what though? And I think in that, and what I've learned is, I still get on stage and I get nervous, so get backstage, get a little dance going, move your
Yeah,
body. But when you get on stage or whatever arena that you're gonna be speaking in, just know, like, the nerves are normal, and again, it means you're human, it means you're feeling, it means you're there in the moment, and I always just say, "Call it like it is," sometimes I walk out and I'm so anxious, hyped up, nervous, I will walk out and be like, "Oh my gosh, it is so amazing to be here." And I ain't gonna lie to you, my nerves are firing on 1,000 cylinders right now, people.
yeah.
And then you
You
almost like take
acknowledge it.
that
Yeah,
moment to take a breath
I
because
love
all of a
that.
sudden you're like on that tarmac and it's like, "Oh gosh." And then
Yep.
eventually you settle in and the plane takes off
Yeah.
and you're gonna hit a little bit of turbulence, but you get there and then all of a sudden you get in a rhythm and
Mm,
then you just go. And I think that's where I've learned to almost bottle up some of those nerves that I start out with. And then when you get to the end, you're like, dang, baby.
yeah.
And it
Let's
ain't
go.
gonna be perfect,
No.
but that's okay. And that's when I learned to compartmentalize. Hey, like it's not gonna be perfect. You're gonna stumble on your words. You're gonna say, oh. But then also too remembering because there's probably going to be things that you wish you said, you wanted to say, you didn't get in there. But the people that are listening, they don't know what arsenal you had packed in
Right.
there in that
That's
gear,
right.
in that toolbox. So, hey, you know what? That's okay. That's also okay. So hit me up before you're ready to go out there. I'm going to give you my pep talk. All right.
Listen, before we wrap up, the question that I like to ask is where you're sitting right now and what you've been through in your life. What is your current definition of success?
Current definition of success. I love that. Current definition of success to me is exactly what we talked about, being able to feel
Mm,
the deep rooted emotion, being able to feel, to understand that you are here right now and the gift that it is to have walked that journey and to be able to
mm,
take the pieces of that journey, the good and the tough, the good and the hard
mm.
that led you down this road to this moment to be able to be truly wholly yourself. And I
Mm,
think that to me is where I feel like success isn't rooted in the paychecks and the cars and the
mm,
house and the material things. When you can set that stuff aside, yes, those things are great, but when you can set that stuff aside, true success to me is when you can fully embrace every step of your journey,
mhm.
the good and the hard, the great, the tough, everything in between, and be proud of who you are and where you came from, and know that your story is still being written. And so to me, that's this success. And I think that once again, it's never I have reached success. I am reaching success.
I love
I
that.
am always walking down that road.
Yeah.
I've never succeeded, right?
No,
But we're striving for success. And I think
moving
that
target.
is when you can have that mindset, get locked in on that and celebrate those victories, big and small, you're
I
going to
love
have a
that.
shift that's going to be really powerful.
Thank you for sharing that. That's powerful stuff. All right, we got to end on a fun note. This
Okay.
is one of my favorite parts of the show. This is my rapid fire segment. So I'm
Rapid
going to
fire.
ask you just a couple of questions for the sake of time. What is the best game you've covered?
Ooh, best game I've covered. Well, I mean, the kick six game, I got to be honest with you. I was standing in the end zone, Auburn, obviously. I know. I'm assuming you're an Alabama fan. I can see it all over your face. I was actually standing in the end zone next to my buddy, Jim Dunaway. And I just remember that kick falling short. And I was like, oh, and then there you go. So I would say that to me, I just remember that being very monumental. And that was still kind of early in my sports coverage, and just being a part of that. Like I don't think you can ever rewrite that
No, no.
story. And it ever I mean,
no.
you just can't.
I've also just decided that we'll scrap this episode. So no, I'm kidding.
Right. I didn't tell
Oh
you
man.
I was for or against it. I was
Uh,
just saying I was there when it
all
happened.
right. I love it. It is unbelievable. I mean, it's it truly that will never be. It may happen again, but it'll never have that like holy cow factor, right? It just
No.
won't. Dream guest to interview.
Ooh, dream guest to interview. My gosh. That is so good. I will tell you, um, I have had the chance to interview a lot of different people, Charles Barkley being one of them. That is just so much fun. Like that
Mhm.
dude is entertainment all day, every day. Have loved, getting to know him over the years and spend time with him. I will tell you that somebody I would love to sit down with, and I think just kind of leaning into their journey, somebody like Tiger Woods has always
Yeah,
been somebody that would be just really cool. My husband's a big golfer, loves to play golf. I've taken up golf a little bit here and there. I'm not great at it, but I just think just what he's walked through his life, the ups and downs. I am all about really leaning in and getting to
yeah,
know someone at the heart of who they are. And I don't
yep,
know, always just thought he would be somebody that would be really cool to sit down with and spend a day with,
yeah.
just
That'd be an
hanging out,
insane
talking. Who
story.
are you? Like, who are
Yeah.
you really?
All right. Last question. You get a week's paid vacation, all expenses included. Are you going to the lake or are you going to the beach?
Ooh, that's a hard one. First of all, it depends on how many toys you have, because if you've got all the toys at the lake, that's a pretty cool place to be. It depends also too what beach we're talking about.
All right.
But, I grew up going to the beach periodically, but I have started to love the lake life quite a
Yeah.
bit, Just and I think I would say lake life with with the backdrop of the mountains,
There
because
you
I'm a
go.
mountain girl. I love the
That's it.
mountains. So, that's it.
Well, Lauren, man, thank you so much for taking time to come on our show and to tell your story and to encourage people and provide such incredible authenticity. I want to make sure that we will put your book link in our show notes as well as
Yes.
ways that people can connect with you, your website, and all that stuff.
Yep. Shatterproof, you can find it pretty much everywhere books are sold, online, Amazon, and good news is we got the paperback releasing, September 30th, and so
Love
that
it.
will also be available. Also, I have an audio version that I tracked myself,
That's so cool.
narrated, definitely appreciate the opportunity to do that, and thank you all for your support, and would love to hear from you. I'm on social media, drop me a line, tell me you heard the show and, what stood out to you, and I'd just love to hear your story.
I love that. Thank you.